All right, so today we are going to be starting with High Flight, a poem by John Gillespie Magee Jr., quite a name, who had just graduated from the Royal Canadian Air Force Flight School. So he had just learned how to fly and he was headed off to World War II. He's a young man. He was only 19 years old. And that's amazing. When you read this poem, I think that you'll be impressed by it. I mean, I was. And it really makes you think like he's about the same age as a lot of the famous names were when they started writing. Samuel Taylor Coleridge, William Wordsworth. A lot of these were really young guys who started writing poetry when they were younger. You might be writing poetry yourself. I hope that you are, and maybe it looks like this. In fact, I've read some of your poetry, and it is very good. Please keep writing. So, I'm just going to read a little bit of a background about this guy because I think it's really interesting and important to how we think about this poem, especially in light of taking risks. So here is his background. He sent this poem home to his parents just a couple of months before he died. And, when you think about he was 19. He could have entered Yale University in 1939 on a scholarship, but instead chose to enlist in the Royal Canadian Air Force to fight in World War II. Talk about a risk, talk about a sacrifice. When you imagine your future, can you imagine yourself making a choice like that? Even further, he died in World War II, but not in some glorious fashion. He didn't die taking out enemy fighters. He died in a training accident. He ran into another aircraft while he was flying. Terrible way to go. Not that it would have been different or better necessarily if he had died, in the middle of battle, but certainly at least closer to that narrative that we have in our minds of the magnificent death. Hemingway wrote that there is no glory in warfare. There is only death, disease, and darkness and mud. Is that correct? If you made the decision to sacrifice your future to join the military, as this author did, would you be somewhat disappointed if it was death in a training ground as opposed to in battle? Who knows? All that said, I'm going to read this poem, and please follow along in your Google Doc. So this is High Flight by John Gillespie Magee Jr. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds, and done 100 things you have not dreamed of, wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up, up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the wind-swept heights with easy grace where never lark or ever eagle flew. And while, with silent, lifting mind, I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God. Powerful stuff. Think about it, analyze it, react to it, and watch my next video where I close read a little bit of it. Thanks, guys. See you soon.